Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at Lupin Limited's Q2 FY2025 performance.
Ooh.
Yeah, they actually just released their report. And there's some interesting stuff in there, I think you'll agree. Um, for those who haven't heard of them, Lupin is an Indian multinational pharmaceutical company that's really making a name for themselves in the world of generic and branded drugs.
Yeah, I've had my eye on them, especially with their work in complex generics and biosimilars. It seems like they're going after some pretty innovative stuff.
For sure. So let's just jump right into it. First up, the financials. Lupin saw revenue growth of 11.3% year over year.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Right.
Bringing them to a total of INR 5,497 crores. But here's where I think things get really interesting. The EBITDA margin expanded to 23.8% compared to 18.7% in Q2 of last year.
Whoa. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a pretty significant jump.
Right, makes you wonder what's behind that kind of performance.
Yeah, it could be a few things, right? Maybe they're getting better at pricing their newer products, or they've tightened up their cost controls, or maybe it's just the market shifting in their favor. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep this up.
Totally. Now let's look at some of their specific areas of focus. In respiratory, they've got the generic for Spiriva and Luforbec, which are, pretty big names in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are key products for them, especially with the growing demand for treatments for COPD and asthma.
Right. And then there's the injectable space. They're launching Glucagon and Dalbavancin pretty soon.
Ugh.
And they've got risperidone and liraglutide slated for next fiscal year.
So they're really ramping up their injectables game.
They are. And get this, they're also getting into the diabetes market with GLP-1 products like semaglutide and tirzepatides.
Interesting. The GLP-1 market is exploding right now. It's not just about controlling blood sugar anymore. Some of these drugs can even help with weight loss.
Exactly. They're planning to launch these in India in 2026. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that'll be a market to watch for sure. Very competitive.
It is. So we've got all that going on. But they're also making some big moves in terms of expansion. They're talking about going global with products like Luforbec and planning new launches in respiratory injectables and biosimilars.
It sounds like they're trying to cover all the bases.
They are. They're also getting into specialty businesses with a focus on respiratory and neurology. They even mentioned potential mid-sized acquisitions, so they're definitely not afraid to shake things up.
That's a bold move. Specialty pharmaceuticals are a whole different ballgame compared to their core generics business. It'll be interesting to see how they navigate that.
For sure. And as if all that wasn't enough, they're also starting a new subsidiary for CDMO services, basically leveraging their existing manufacturing to become a supplier for other pharma companies.
Wow, so they're going from making their own products to helping other companies make theirs. That's a pretty big shift.
It is. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, the CDMO market is getting really competitive. They'll need to find a way to stand out from the crowd.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the big picture stuff, but what about their day-to-day operations? Well, they've added a ton of salespeople in India, which has led to a PCPM of around INR 7.5 lakhs.
PCPM?
Oh, sorry. That's per capita productivity per month.
Yeah.
Basically a measure of how much revenue each salesperson is bringing in.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. So they're really investing in their sales force.
They are. And on the flip side, they've also mentioned implementing some cost improvement and efficiency measures.
Makes sense. Got to keep those costs down, especially in an industry with such tight margins.
Exactly. So based on all of this, what are your initial thoughts? Does it seem like Lupin is headed in the right direction?
They're definitely playing an aggressive game. Lots of expansion, new products, venturing into new territory with specialty pharma and CDMO services. It's ambitious, but, high risk, high reward. It all comes down to execution.
I like that. High risk, high reward. And that's actually a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll take a closer look at some of those risks.
Yeah, high risk, high reward for sure. Like take their global expansion, for example. Venturing into new markets can be a great way to grow. But it's not as simple as just showing up with your products and expecting everyone to roll out the red carpet.
Yeah, I imagine it's a little more complicated than that. What kind of challenges are we talking about?
Well, each country has its own regulatory hurdles. Right? You've got local competitors who already have relationships and market share. And then there's the whole thing about building brand recognition, which takes time and money. And we can't forget about things like currency fluctuations and even political instability in some regions. It can get pretty messy.
Yikes. Makes sense. And what about their push into specialty pharmaceuticals? We touched on this a bit earlier, but it seems like that's a whole different world compared to their generics business.
Absolutely. You're dealing with much smaller patient populations, often with very complex conditions that require specialized treatments. So Lupin's going to need a whole new approach to marketing patient support and even navigating the complexities of insurance reimbursement. It's a steep learning curve for sure.
Okay, so lots of potential hurdles there. With both the expansion and the specialty pharma, what about the CDMO business? Is that a safer bet?
Not necessarily. The CDMO market is getting super crowded these days with tons of players all vying for those big contracts. So Lupin's really going to have to differentiate themselves, maybe by focusing on specific therapeutic areas or developing a reputation for really top-notch quality and reliability.
So it sounds like even with the CDMO, there's no guarantee of success?
Nope. It all comes down to execution, winning those contracts, building those relationships with other companies, and proving that they can deliver.
Gotcha. So risks all around. But hey, we did see some pretty strong financials in Q2. That double-digit revenue growth and margin expansion can't be ignored, can it?
True. Their current strategy seems to be working, but that doesn't mean it's a guaranteed recipe for future success, you know? Those new product launches need to go smoothly. They need to navigate all those expansion challenges we talked about, and they've got to maintain those margins. It's a lot to juggle.
Absolutely. Let's zoom in on some of those key product launches. Injectables seem to be a big area of focus for them.
For sure. The upcoming launches of Glucagon and Dalbavancin could be big wins for them.
How so?
Well, glucagon is a really important emergency treatment for severe hypoglycemia, and Dalbavancin is a long-acting antibiotic. Both have the potential to generate a lot of revenue if they can secure a decent chunk of the market.
Okay. And what about their move into the diabetes market with those GLP-1s? That seems like a pretty smart move considering how many people have diabetes these days.
It is a smart move, but it's also a very crowded market. Lots of big players already have GLP-1 products out there. So Lupin's going to have to offer something unique, whether it's superior efficacy, a more convenient dosing regimen, or a competitive price, to really carve out a decent market share.
So it sounds like competition is pretty fierce.
It is, but they do have a strong track record in generics, which gives them some experience with navigating regulatory pathways and bringing products to market efficiently.
Right. And their global reach could be an advantage here, too.
Right.
They can potentially launch these products in multiple markets at once, giving them a much wider audience.
Exactly. And we can't forget about their focus on operational efficiency. If they can keep their costs down, that'll give them more flexibility in terms of pricing.
Okay, so experience, reach, and efficiency.
Yep.
Those are all good things.
Yeah.
But can they keep up with the innovation that's happening in the pharmaceutical world? Can they stay ahead of the curve?
That's the big question. And to their credit, they are investing in R&D, particularly in complex generics and biosimilars, which are areas that require a pretty high level of technical expertise.
Speaking of biosimilars,
Yeah.
they've got that ranibizumab biosimilar in development.
Yeah.
That could be a game changer if it gets approved.
Right. Absolutely. Huge potential there. Ranibizumab is a blockbuster drug for treating age-related macular degeneration. If Lupin can bring a biosimilar to market, they could tap into a massive market.
But we've got to remember, biosimilars are complex. They need to prove that they're just as effective and safe as the original biologic. And that means going through rigorous clinical trials and a tough regulatory approval process.
Right. And the manufacturing is no walk in the park either. Biosimilars are complex molecules to produce. Lupin's going to have to make sure they have the capacity and the expertise to scale up production if they really want to compete effectively.
So lots of ifs and buts on the biosimilars front, for sure. Now let's shift gears to their CDMO venture. We talked about the competitive landscape, but what are some of their strengths in this area? Why would another pharma company choose Lupin as their CDMO partner?
Well, for one, they have a very long history in manufacturing high-quality pharmaceuticals. I mean, they've been doing this for decades, and they have a global network of manufacturing facilities.
So they've got the experience and the infrastructure.
Exactly. And it seems like they're being strategic about leveraging their existing expertise. You know, they're focusing their CDMO services on complex generics and biosimilars, which are areas where they already have significant capabilities.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Play to your strengths.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't forget about those cost optimization initiatives they've been working on. If they can offer competitive pricing while still maintaining high quality, that could make them a really attractive option for potential CDMO clients.
So experience, expertise, and potentially competitive pricing sounds like a good starting point.
Right.
But ultimately, it all comes down to relationships.
Right.
They need to convince other companies that they can be a reliable and trusted partner.
100%. This is where their sales and marketing teams will really need to step up. building those relationships, showcasing their capabilities, and proving their worth. That's going to be key to securing those CDMO contracts.
So a whole new set of challenges, but potentially a huge opportunity if they can pull it off. But let's not forget, they've already got a lot on their plate with all those other initiatives we talked about. Can they effectively manage all these moving parts? That's the question, isn't it? It all comes down to execution and operational efficiency. Are they allocating their resources wisely? Are they making smart investments? Are they staying on top of potential risks and challenges? These are all things we'll need to keep an eye on.
Okay, so lots to consider. We've covered their strategic moves, the risks and rewards, and some of the key areas they're focusing on. But before we wrap up this deep dive, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What's their overall outlook? Okay, so we've talked about all these ambitious plans, but can Lupin really pull it all off? I mean, they've set some pretty aggressive targets.
Yeah.
Like reaching EBITDA margins of 23% to 25% in the medium term.
Yeah, those are some bold goals, especially in an industry that's, known for its price pressures and constantly changing regulations. Achieving those margins is going to require like near perfect execution across the board.
Exactly. And we've already talked about all the potential pitfalls with, expanding into new markets and venturing into new areas like specialty pharma and CDMO. It seems like every opportunity comes with a whole lot of risk.
It definitely does. And they can't afford to ignore those risks. They need to be proactive about identifying those potential roadblocks, coming up with mitigation strategies, and just being prepared to adapt if things don't go exactly according to plan.
So internal factors like execution and risk management are super important. But what about external factors? What kind of things could, throw a wrench in their plans that are completely outside of their control?
Well, the global economic climate is always a wild card.
Right.
If major markets experience a downturn, that could lead to, softer demand for pharmaceuticals, and that could put pressure on prices.
And then there's a whole regulatory landscape, which is always in flux. Changes in regulations, especially in key markets like the U.S., could impact their ability to, bring new products to market or even affect the profitability of their existing products. It's like a constant game of catch-up.
And don't forget about the competition. The pharmaceutical industry is incredibly dynamic. New players are popping up all the time, and the existing players are always looking for an edge. So Lupin can't afford to get complacent. They need to stay ahead of the curve in terms of innovation efficiency and just being responsive to the market.
It sounds like a pretty tough environment.
It is. It's a constant uphill battle.
So given all of these factors, internal and external, what's your overall assessment of Lupin's prospects? Do you think they have what it takes to really thrive in this challenging environment?
I think they definitely have a lot going for them. They have a solid track record, a pipeline full of promising products, a clear strategy for growth, and they seem willing to take calculated risks, but it's a crowded and competitive landscape, and there are a lot of things that could potentially derail their plans.
And so it's a bit of a mixed bag, lots of potential, but also plenty of challenges to overcome.
Exactly. The next few years are going to be crucial for Lupin. Their decisions, their execution, and maybe even a bit of luck will determine whether they hit those ambitious goals or, stumble along the way.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up our deep dive into Lupin Limited. We've covered their financials, their product pipeline, their expansion plans, and the competitive landscape they're facing. All in all, I'd say they're a company to watch.
Yeah, definitely. Keep an eye on them.
As always, we encourage you to do your own research and stay informed. The pharmaceutical world is constantly changing, and knowledge is power. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.